you can go out and get high every day and run around and do all this, nut job stuff, you can put that effort into doing some good.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to see if I can get Dean Lauren on this. Have you watched my Dean Lauren tapes on YouTube?
I don't think so.
I would direct you to those. He is one of the most important Manhattan neighborhood network producers who used to have a show called New York Dirty Judges, and as well as Washington, D.C. Dirty Judges. And what he showed was that one of the judges that prevented him from passing the bar because he was standing up for undertrodden people is that the judge was wearing a wire. In other words, getting instructions from the back room. And so that's why I have absolutely no energy into reinvestigate 9/11 and bring them to justice, because if you could have brought the buildings down and have people who were instrumental in directed energy weapon science being the head of the so-called 9/11 truth movement, well, obviously they're going to have their control over the judges.
You're climbing up an endless ladder.
Yeah, exactly. So
instead of going down into the rabbit hole, you're going up the ladder.
Now, speaking of going down the rabbit hole, though, have you watched any of the shows I've done with Harold Channer?
Yeah, I have.
Because he says comprehensive.
One thing that I keep coming away from, there's this 9/11 resonating theme, I think, with everybody always, but I think it's one of if you look at what's happening today in America, and you look at the big picture, and are able to kind of draw back, you can see a level of dissent towards the official story. You can almost taste it, but it's unspoken. It's you look. Half this country is voting for somebody they don't even know.
Right.
So that they don't have to put a vote to a name brand.
But instead of
franchise, the people have become.
But instead of griping about that, and there's plenty of reasons to gripe about it, what I like to do is seek out those powerful models of change. And now with binary economics, in the discussion I had with Blasting Caps and Professor Ashford, it seemed as though the pivotal point was exactly what you're talking about right now. It's what people don't want to talk about. And as soon as you bring up capital ownership, it's like almost impolite to bring it up.
Right.
That it's your ownership
and
of capital.
How is the truth now a bad thing? And that's what I mean. They've weaponized patriotism. Patriotism has been turned into a weapon against the people. And it's frightening.
Yes.
And if you don't agree with if you just want the truth, you're a bad person. And that, it just throws logic and reason out the window and is fox-fed right into your brain.
But now let me get one thing straight with you. Were you following the discussion on binary economics with Blasting Caps?
Yes.
Okay,
and
there's
it was actually one of the reasons I inquired on calling you, because I kind of know the guy.
Oh.
Indirectly. We're from the same city. I used to frequent a place that he frequents. We don't know each other personally at all. I just know of him.
Okay.
And that was kind of like, okay, so anyone can call in.
Right.
And that was kind of my motivating thing to.
Okay, but one thing I want to be really clear, to use your qualified energy here. The reason that if you share the capital today, that whoever gives away some percentage of ownership in their company to, say, a reinsuring outfit that would absolutely insure, whatever that would cost, to bring new shareholders on board. The reason they wouldn't be giving anything away, say they own 50% of the company, and they give out 25%, so-called give it out. They don't really give it out because they're getting it back from the insurance company. That means that because you're starting to develop the economy more by spreading the capital, your company, so many years from now, is going to be so much more valuable because there's going to be a market for the products. People are going to have the capacity to buy things, to build houses, to do all of the movement.
perpetual economic motion.
Well, you're not housing people in prisons. I mean, you were part of an actual industry. What Dean Lauren pointed out is there is an actual master plan called Schools to Prisons, where using medications like Ritalin and so on, which is illegal on the streets, they
I saw it firsthand.
Yeah.
I watched it. I mean, I watched it in this. I mean, I almost felt like I was outside of my body when they were basically just teaching these young kids that were coming into the jail how to come back.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, see, that's why and San Quentin, I stopped teaching there because they weren't putting one nickel towards the meditation program, even though my friend who had a PhD and did the equivalent of a master's degree in terms of the meticulous statistical care that she took to present a recidivism study showing the millions of dollars that the state of California would save by introducing transcendental meditation into the prison system. Instead of even, giving us, I decided in those days I was worth $40 an hour. I mean, it was like a huge step in self-esteem. And they wouldn't give one nickel towards it. And I said, if I continue teaching here, I've got more problems than the men I'm trying to teach. Because you need to honor yourself and your time. That's when I began.
I think I left half of my point 20 minutes ago. But I did this transcendental spiritual thing. It had no label on it. It didn't have, it didn't come in a manual. But I would lay in my cell, and I would, reading usually would invoke this state where I was able to actually imagine myself having a massage by my girlfriend, or that I was on a beach, or that I was enjoying a meal, and I was able to get myself calm enough and focused enough to just get myself out of this concrete prison. And when you try to, hey, buddy, I got something that can really help you. Listen to me. They look at you like you're crazy.
Wow.
And when I would go to, other, it's like, well, you're trying to introduce some strange religion or some type of weird spiritual. I said, no, it's just...
It's mental control.
Just letting go and clearing your mind and yourself out of here, but they want you to always be aware that you are in there.
Wow. Well, yeah, but I mean, you can either give them that power or not. I was talking to my father, and fortunately Rosalie videotaped it. I thought, or taped it. I thought that I had shut down the stream, and I was having a private conversation with my father, and we managed to make a little more headway regarding the chemotherapy. And I said, look at Daddy, essentially what I meant was, I'm not making you wrong about taking chemotherapy. But the fact that you have been taking this since August, I mean, he's coming on to, 8 months of really aggressive, grueling therapy, to me indicates your health, not your sickness. But, rather than griping over the system that, is probably so corrupt they're not bringing the right therapies to market, I said, Daddy, do you realize that poison is actually a type of meditation? Because if you can take poison and maintain your focus, that means you have achieved a certain mastery of understanding the relationship between your mind and body. So by the same token, you probably learned in prison in a more profound way what meditation was than what any teacher could ever teach you.
Oh, absolutely. I learned, my eyes were open. And like I said, that's when I woke up. I mean, I had been a successful musician before that. Drugs got me in there. But before that, I was in a very well-known rock band, touring the country. I've worked with every musician you could probably think of, and I was successful. But I was addicted. And, when the addiction finally destroyed the success, you have to resort to other things. And I briefly did that, and I got caught, luckily, quick enough that I was able to wake up. And a lot of people aren't afforded that. And I think that music saved my life. I think that my ability to play the guitar and my ability to write and compose is what saved me ultimately. I mean, there was a lot of things that helped along the kids, a lot of guys, men, women, anybody, they don't have that. They don't have that core spiritual rock, so to speak. You know, music affected me on such a profound level. It was encrusted into my DNA.
Wow.
And it saved me. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't have that, but they can find it. Everybody has something, you know, that they can rely on, and if you can exploit that and manipulate it in a good way, of course, then you can use it to your benefit. And like I said, if you can put all this energy into getting up and lying and stealing and doing this sickness every day, then you can put all that energy into changing this country. And,
right.
you know, a lot of people, like I said, we were saying before, have just moved on. We've accepted that there is something fishy about 9/11, but it's time to move on.
Right.
And it's almost like unspoken truth.
Right.
Yes, we know something's wrong. We know something, and that's being seen today by the way people are voting.
Yes. Yes.
So, very, very interesting to watch the wave of opinion sweep across the country. You know, a lie can make it to California, and the truth can't even get a bus ticket.
Right. Right.
It's really frightening how 5 major media corporations have also dominated everything that you think, feel, and understand.
Yeah.
You are the anti-media. You know, I mean, this has to be scaring them, these globalists. They have to be shaking in their boots with people like you and Alex Jones and the WebFairy and people out there that are...
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't want them to shake in their boots, because I'm thinking just like those nucleuses that were all packed together, there comes this magic moment when what repels does just the opposite. It bonds. All of them bond.
It is delicate.
And they release...
It's a delicate situation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm banking on, because
Yeah.
I can't afford to feel that it's scary or whatever like that. It's just, but I do find that I get more empowered when I do take a risk. Like I took a risk the other day on the pedophilia stuff, because Nico Haupt, you know, he really swims in the energy, and I admire when I feel energy move. And he used this expression, plain huggers are pedophiles. And I know that a lot of people, my fellow producers like Frank Craven, Joe Friendly, would be horrified. I mean, in a certain way, they're too innocent to even consider.
But you have to remember this. Like I said before, take the. I'm sorry to say it, but you know, look at the Church of Scientology's ideas. Always attack, never defend, because you cannot defend bull crap. You can only attack it. So when people get confronted with the truth, or they see something that resonates a chord of truth deep inside of them, that's where that comes from. So,
yeah,
in my opinion, when I see these comments, these horrible comments to people that are only seeking the truth, I see it as them exposing themselves for the true, you know, ugly person that they are.
Yeah, but you know what? Here's how you can...
Get excited now.
No. Here's how you can sympathize, though. If you start looking in a comprehensive way at the way the economy's going, how are people paying their rent? It didn't surprise me when I looked at this Center for Strategic Communication, Learning, Laboratory, whatever, that a huge amount of money is going into this sort of disinformation stuff. So people, how many times when people answer a job to work from your own home, are they actually kind of getting suckered in to doing a kind of a busybody work, an eavesdropping, a disinformation thing? And they probably...
Yeah, Google implied the same type of things, I don't know if you know. But they devise these little games and these little things where people play. And when in turn, you know, I live right down the street from CMU, and I know a lot of these guys. And these games were actually designed to be polls in opinion.
Yeah.
And the people were like filling the informational databases unwillingly by playing a simple game, and it's almost the same type of a thing, you know, by compiling information.
Okay, here I'm gonna really do one better on you here. This is amazing. I ran across a video about conversations with a pedophile. I don't know if you've seen that. And they said that this is sort of a two-way sword, because on one hand it could be a handbook, but it talked about cultivating a child to get him to do these things. And it isn't something that just happens, bang, right away. It's something that happens over time. And I realized in reading, in looking at that video, that I have been subjugated to some of this treatment rather recently. Fortunately, I'm very protected on many levels. I've studied with great masters, and two masters in particular right now is the WebFairy and Nico Haupt. And their mastery comes from their commitment, from the commitment of what they're living. Even though I had just been, say, with a successful person that night, and the person said that Nico Haupt, totally loved Nico Haupt and what he was doing, but said he doesn't have survival skills. But it just depends. Are you talking about the survival skill of one individual? Or are you talking about a type of patriotism that's a survival skill for the entire country? In which case, I honestly think someone like Nico Haupt or the WebFairy would be the first ones that would say to anybody who is getting money for doing this type of web posting or comment posting, saying these horrible things that, as Nico pointed out to me first, is really written or read from a script. They would be the first ones to open their hearts and say, "Come on board with us."
Right.
We know you're just
there's a very large, integrated, well-funded shill group, internet shill group.
But what I'm saying is, shills are human beings too that are trying to pay their rent. So can we create a space?
Oh, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, but you're selling the soul to the devil at that point, though.
Well, here's what Nico's big frustration is now. The no-planers are not coming out and supporting this stance. And he said, look, if you think I'm a fuck-up and I'm not doing it right, go out and do your own political agitation. Come up with some other strategy, but do something, and don't support the regular 9/11 truth cults like my friend Joe Friendly or Frank Craven would be horrified because they know these people. And I can't tell Frank or Joe about pedophilia. They wouldn't understand. It's not a passion in them to say that these people are coming out and killing cold fusion or doing this goofy thermite idea because they are blackmailable. Either they're afraid of losing their job or they have some sexual secret.
And I think that's where people like me that have an advantage.
Yes.
I got nothing to lose.
Exactly.
Okay? You can't there's nothing that they can do to me that I can't do better to myself.
Yeah, I mean, I was even thinking of, someone said, I had someone who was a Green Hornet months ago, and he said, wow, you're so brave, and if I said what I knew, what happened in Vietnam, I would be afraid for my grandchildren. And I felt like saying, but it's because of your grandchildren that you want to come out and speak. But people don't feel that way. They really are afraid. So you have to unlock.
The video I did. If you watch my videos, I think I touched on just about everything we've talked about in some form. And you're right. The people that can bring the truth to light will be blackmailed. And I think that another thing is people like the WebFairy, who I absolutely honor, and was one of the people that really got my brain working. Got that whole thing, and when I opened up my eyes and I started to remember that day, and I remember what was happening that day, and I remember seeing what I saw, and it did not look like a plane. It was this little blip coming up from the top right of the screen, and 2 seconds later, Matt Lauer shows two clips, one without a plane, the next one identical with a plane, and but everyone was in shock. There's a video out there, The Shock Doctrine, which is very good. And it just demonstrates how people were so unbelievably in shock that it doesn't matter what hit the building. It doesn't matter. Is my family okay? Are my loved ones okay? It doesn't matter.
Right.
And those things, when the shock wears off, that's when it matters.
Yeah, right.
But nobody, Dr. Thompson said it the best. If you say something bad about the president or don't agree with the story, you're some type of terrorist.
Yeah, right.
And that's insanity, and that's the weaponization of patriotism.
Yes, yes, yes. Isn't that amazing that somebody like you, who's been in prison, can be the greater patriot than somebody who hasn't even touched that type of a challenge. And furthermore, the practice that you're describing that you did in the cell, let me tell you, I have been in all the different self-help New Age cults and things like that. I've been down to the Monroe Institute. I've studied with masters in all kinds of continents. And you did something that people pay thousands of dollars and go to the ends of the earth to do. You learned how to control your mind.
It was almost, I almost wasn't conscious of it though. The pain in which I was under and the fear in which I was under was so immense and so great. Here I am, 140 pounds, you know, some little rock star they throw in a cell, you know, and I'm with all these trumped up charges. I was frightened. I was scared.
Right.
And I had gone through an experience where I went through 33 days. I'll never forget this. 33 days where I did not sleep. Not one. Well, that's not true. Maybe 15 minutes. Only because my brain was shutting down. I wouldn't call it sleep. And I was hallucinating, and I realized I was, even though I was in this state of massive detox, I was able to still be in touch with my core self. It was almost as if I was looking at myself in a movie or on television. And
wow.
And that's when I cracked. And when I cracked and that separation occurred, and I was truly able to step outside of my body and see the disgusting slime of a mess I was, and the shame I had brought into my name and my family. When the escapism, because that's what drugs are. And I had found a new way of escapism that was positive and that was enlightening and was euphoric and it was free and it was natural and it was mine and nobody could take it away from me. So anytime I witnessed anything bad there, or bad things were happening there, I would open a book or I would go in my cell and lock the door. I was in a maximum security facility. They don't have bars. It's a solid steel door with a bulletproof little sliver of glass to look at. And that was my sanctuary. You know, I listened to the Challenger blow up on a radio in there, and there's times that I go back there and I think, what a horrible time this was, but what a beautiful time it was. Of a man is his own island, and I really learned from that and prospered from it. And this isn't, anyone can do this. There's people do it all the time. They go hiking to the mountains, or like you said, they travel the world and they study with different, cults. I don't know if you
cults.
Comfortable using that word.
Cults, absolutely.
But, learning, I think, is the fundamental idea of life.
Yeah.
Absorbing all this beautiful information out there, but never claiming to really understand it, and that's like where the truth comes in, and my problem with a lot of these pundits and these televangelists and all these religions is that you have to believe exactly what they believe or you should die.
Yeah.
And that is the absolute epitome of illogical, irrational behavior.
I want to pass on a
Things that he knows what's going on should then be in the astral plane.
No, I understand. Listen, Hunter, I want to pass on to you a blessing that was given to me. It was given to me by a Brahmin yoga teacher in the south of India who was critical about my interest in Tantra. He said, "Why are you studying this?" And I said, "Because I'm running a charity and all the stuff I've studied isn't giving me the power that I need to solve the problems that I want to solve." And one day I showed him a paper of a practice I had done where I had said mantras all night long, or maybe for 3 days straight, something like that. And even though he'd been critical of my practice, you know what he said? He goes, "I salute your practice. I salute your practice." In other words, he recognized the passion in me. And I want to say, I am so honored that you called today, because
Thank you so much.
I have been wanting this connection, because we urgently need to reunite with the part of society that has been cut away from us. The people in prison, they're part of our society, and we've been estranged from all of that talent and ability. And for you to call up today and, for Blasting Caps to put his energy on the binary economics, I just feel enormously blessed, and I salute your practice.
That was very commendable.
Yeah, well, thank you. So,
this is, and that this re-echoes, my girlfriend just informed me that I said I've worked with every musician that you could think of. Well, I think we can narrow that down a little bit. We're talking about truth here, so. But, people have become fed by the television and fed by what they're told at church. Ben is on the net is a good site on YouTube, and he shows simply, there's very good people out there that are just believe these lies, and their belief in these lies actually turns into action, and that's where it becomes frightening.
But what are you going to do? Because that's how they were trained. Like, my mom, I said the other day, my brother told me, after he saw the stream of me and WebFairy and Alan hashing it out on this Photoshop stuff, that my mom had said on 9/11 it was like watching a cartoon. And my brother didn't tell her what he had just seen. And she didn't say it was like a cartoon to other people because out of respect for the tragedy and the loss. But I want to say in defense of Alan not seeing that there were no airplanes in there, that what else Alan didn't see? When some of the mashups were going on with the pedophilia stuff and the little girl was, looking through the hand and, you can imagine what that was. Well, Alan couldn't imagine what that was. So that showed to me his innocence. So a lot of people, they just don't see things. You went through a horrifying but also awesome experience that other people haven't been through, and they still live in a television world.
And that's why they don't want to speak out. They feel that they'll be disrespecting these victims somehow.
Well,
they feel that by speaking out against 9/11, they're disrespecting these people that gave their lives.
Right.
That's where the weaponization of patriotism comes in.
Yeah.
Where you start using this against people. How could you say that? Like, look what Bill O'Reilly did with that the son of that guy that was killed, and how he berated him and raked him across the coals on national television. This is a victim, and here, because to support this insane idea that Bill likes to perpetrate, he has to, victimize this kid even more, and that was just mind-blowing.
Oh, well, Rome is not built in a day, and I really want to thank you so much for calling in. I'm going to get this posted.
I want to thank you.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate it. And I'll get this up, and let's stand by for the comments, abusive and otherwise. And
I'm sure.
And we'll make something creative out of whatever happens, okay?
Well, I'm with you, and go free speech and freedom. And thank you, Paul.
And by the way, are you playing right now in a band?
I'm currently working on an album that should probably be up by the summer.
If you ever want to come to New York, I want to invite Blasting Caps Band. Maybe we can do an event where we have the musicians come together also.
That'd be interesting, yeah.
We can celebrate, and like Alan's not into the no planes, but he's very intrigued by binary economics. So maybe we can kind of highlight the positive, and then maybe kind of underlying it for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. They will come out, and then meanwhile you can get other people who might be too timid to just come to a straight 9/11 kind of a conference or event.
I know some people in New York, and so maybe that'll happen. It would be nice to see some action come of this.
Yeah.
Like there's a statement I make now. Now we speak, soon we run.
Right.
And it's just we speak in baby steps, and soon we'll be running.
Right. But anyway, I also want to thank you for calling, because this is the kind of thing I think Nico Haupt was saying, do something,
Something, right, exactly.
And be cautious, too, about what you're doing. Do you really want to be supporting Thermite and the limited hangouts if that's distracting? And that's why I wanted to emphasize the Stephen Jones. And I was so
Support
delighted.
the truth, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
Well, it really comes down to that, and we have to get rid of this paradigm of ignorance.
Great. Well, we'll do it. So thanks a lot, and over and out.
Thank you very much, Paula. Have a good day. Enjoy the show.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
So that was wonderful. So I'm overwhelmed. I'm honored, as I said, because I have really been wanting to get, a connection with people in the prisons. And there it was. Let me get back to Heavy Watergate. Oh no, here's Heavy Watergate here.
Heavy water. One of the electrodes in the cell was made of the precious metal palladium. The electrical current separated out individual deuterium atoms and forced them to pack tightly with the palladium cathode. What happened next remains a mystery. Whether it was nuclear fusion or something else, the heat energy that came out of that little jar was thousands to millions of times what could be explained by any known chemical reaction.
Most classically trained physicists, the idea that low-level nuclear reactions could produce significant heat energy was unthinkable. The nuclei of atoms are all positively charged. They repel each other. They don't want to come together or fuse except at millions of degrees. And when they do, deadly radiation can be the result.
The U.S. Department of Energy, or DOE, convened a review panel in April of 1989. Dr. John Huizinga, an early cold fusion critic, was assigned to a chair position, though his bias against cold fusion was well known. Huizinga claimed cold fusion was nonsense and advised authorities against a formal investigation. By mid-July, the DOE panel had completed their damning report.
Earlier in this century, a very distinguished chemist by the name of Irving Langmuir defined pathological science as the science of things that aren't true. And I have labeled my book, Cold Fusion, the scientific fiasco of the century, simply because there's no experimental evidence at this point that any nuclear reaction products have been formed. Therefore, the claim that cold fusion is a nuclear reaction process without a commensurate amount of nuclear reaction products is simply pathological science.
But 10 years of results from successful experiments support another conclusion.
There are thousands of papers that have already been published on cold fusion showing the evidence for the excess heat, the nuclear products, including helium, tritium, low-level neutrons. But at the same time, we have the establishment of physics and the establishment of science, for that matter, totally ignoring this and, in fact, mocking it.
Very quickly I realized that cold fusion was going to be the world's best example of pathological science.
My criticism
On corruption.
All right. And speaking...
Ugly George protects me from all that.
That's right. She's a sweet, innocent young virgin, and she knows nothing about corruption in Sacramento. That's it, Sacramento?
Sacramento's the state
Sacramento,
capital.
okay. And she doesn't remember the favorite color of moronic Californians 10 years ago.
Red.
No, it was...
Power,
5 minutes.
hydraulic power, or nuclear fission power, because it is potentially small. And the investments required are much smaller. And hopefully it can be mass produced by industry. And this completely changes the whole
Ask me about this
concept of power generation, distribution, consumption.
I think the electric power grid will absolutely wither away. I think automobiles, trucks, trains, planes, all forms of transportation will use this new powerful energy source. The writing is on the wall. The fossil fuel age is about to end.
Every day, the burning of fossil fuels contributes to the destruction of our environment, while the breakthrough discovery of a totally clean, virtually unlimited energy source languishes in obscurity.
It's history in the making, what we're living here. I couldn't dream of a situation like that.
Despite a decade of experimentation and a body of indisputable evidence, The gatekeepers of official science continue to deprive us of a technology we so desperately need to be proper stewards of our world.
Without some morals or something to believe in on this planet, be it God or science or whatever you truly believe in, and what do you have? What do you have? What do you have? What reason do you have to survive? What reason do you have to go on? We did nothing wrong. We made no mistakes in our observations. We made no mistakes.
In a world where corruption, greed, and political maneuvering often win out over the virtues of the human spirit, we believed, perhaps naively, that an exception might exist in the experimental sciences. The history of science is littered with individual incidents of fraud, patent stealing, and flagrant misrepresentation, but here we found a contemporary conspiracy that overshadows most of what we've discovered in the Phenomenon Archives.
So, welcome back. That was called Heavy Watergate, and I'm joined right now, surprisingly and happily surprisingly so, by Ugly George. What are your comments? You only came in on the last 10 minutes.
You are living in the wrong century. You are living in the 21st century, okay? You should be living in the 20th century, and more important, the 19th century. Not 500 feet from where we're sitting is the home of a man who made the 19th century shine, because he did something that no one had done ever before in history. He drew 3,000 miles together instantly. And you know what his name was? No, not Peter Cooper. First of all, that was the 1790s, okay? And you know what Peter Cooper is famous for? It's not drawing continents together. You know how he made his fortune? I bet you don't.
The transatlantic cable.
No.
No?
No, Polish person. Glue. He invented glue.
Really?
Yeah, he invented a glue that worked better than anybody else's glue.
Just 300, 500 feet from here?
No, I didn't say Peter Cooper. You did.
Okay.
And that's how he made his university up the block here, Cooper Union. He glued it together. Okay. No, but in the middle of the 19th century, 500 feet from here, was a guy who erased 3,000 miles, and it used to take 30 days to get a message across. He got it instantly. You know his name.
Alexander Graham Bell?
No, Cyrus Field. And what did Cyrus Field do 500 feet from here? You don't know. The cable. The first transatlantic cable around 1859. Cyrus Field, 500 feet from here, he put the deal together. Okay?
I thought it was Peter Cooper that put the deal together.
No, Peter Cooper was long dead by then. Okay?
And
it was Cyrus Field.
But then it failed. And then he did it 7 years later.
Then they had to do it again, okay? Because he failed to take into account fish. The fish looked at that cable and they said, "Oh, food, good!" And they ate the cable, okay? So he had to lay it down again.
That's amazing, because I just talked about this yesterday. I thought it was Peter Cooper, though.
No,
so.
Cyrus Field, 100 feet, 500 feet from here, did it, okay? And he made a great success of the transatlantic cable. I think it was a penny a word or something. But, you know, it was no longer 30 days to get a message from Britain to America.
Right.
Remember, Britain was the middle of the world.
I didn't know you were a Manhattan history buff.
Well, you have to be, okay? No, but 50 years after that, a man answered your cold fusion arguments here, okay? Yeah. The thing that these guys are largely leaving out is money, okay? Right. And there was the money man, as a matter of fact, not far from here on 32nd Street, who answered the question. He was brought a great invention 100 years ago to bring electricity cheaply into homes all over the United States, and he was appalled. And you know what he famously said? His name was J.P. Morgan. And when they explained to him how electricity could be made available cheaply all over America, he was appalled. And you know what he said? It's very famous.
I don't remember exactly what he said, but I knew he wanted them paying.
He said, "Where would we put the meter?"
Oh.
Meaning, how do we get paid? Okay?
Right.
So what all these scientists and intellectuals are talking about is, We got a great new source of cheap energy, and it's cheap, and it works, and it's efficient, and it doesn't pollute the atmosphere. And J.P. Morgan, you know where he is now, is saying, but how do we make money from it?
So what is your point? What can we do about it?
What's the point?
Change
The point these guys are trying to do here, okay, is take money out of the mouths of needy energy executives, okay?
Needy energy executives.
Exactly. And you know the most famous one because it wasn't too long ago, okay? Now, if you knew anything about the state of California, which you don't, you would know about evil and corruption, which you know nothing about.
I know nothing about evil and corruption.
All right. And speaking,
Ugly George protects me from all that.
That's right. She's a sweet, innocent young virgin, and she knows nothing about corruption in Sacramento. That's it, Sacramento?
Sacramento is the state
Sacramento,
capital.
okay. And she doesn't remember the favorite color of moronic Californians 10 years ago.
Red.
No, it was gray, as in Gray Davis. Okay? And what does Gray Davis and Sacramento and corruption and energy have to do with each other?
Didn't he stop the electric car?
No.
What was Gray Davis then?
You're just so innocent. It's unbelievable. You pretend to be from California and you don't know the big stuff. And there was a big word. It's been in the news a lot lately, speaking of money. And you know what the big word was? Enron. And what did Enron have to do with Gray Davis and energy in California
It
some
wiped
10
out my
years ago?
grandmother's fortune, so I know that.
Okay. What happened was the corrupt Democrat Gray Davis got in bed with some utility companies and they said, we can make a killing here. You know what? Rolling blackouts. That's what we'll do,
Right.
rolling blackouts.
Scare the bejesus out of them.
And we'll scare the bejesus out of everybody, and we'll say that not because it's our problem, it's beyond our control, but suddenly there's no electricity in this area today, and that area in the other area. So temporarily we've got to triple your electric bill, but it's only temporary. Okay, and so electric bills went through the roof.
Right.
And Gray Davis sat there, and the garbage known as the San Francisco Examiner and KPIX, they never questioned him about it. How the hell at the end of the 20th century can we have blackouts? No one questioned that. Meanwhile, the rates are going through the roof temporarily, and this is going up and that's going up, and a lot of it is being manipulated from 800 to 1,000 miles away in a place called Enron. Okay? It's being manipulated, and none of the garbage in the liberal press bothers to uncover this. What does Enron have to do with Gray Davis? In fact, you know what the garbage press does? It says, it's not Gray Davis's fault. They don't question him on it. And every time he has a conference, he says, my hands are tied. I mean, we have these I'm doing my best. But suddenly there's a crisis, and all this money is being siphoned off, and no one questions.
Everyone's in panic mode.
Everyone's
So
in
they're not
panic, and no
thinking.
one is questioning Gray Davis, how this is happening. No one mentions Exxon. No one mentions Enron. And it's all coming from Enron, which is hundreds of miles away. Okay? And there's a show on TV now called Democrats Now. And Democrats Now and Amy Badman blame the governor of Texas. His name was George Bush. You may have heard of him. Okay? And it's all George Bush's fault. He's the governor of Texas. Well, you know what? The rates aren't being raised in Texas. They're being raised in California with the Democrat Gray Davis. Okay? And no one questions this.
Right.
No one in the probing liberal press says, wait a minute, Gray Davis is the governor. It's the state that's affected. Suddenly enormous fortunes are being made overnight with tripling utility rates. How could this be? How could this happen? And the only answer that's given by Amy Badman is, it must be George Bush's fault in Enron, 800 to 1,000 miles away in a place called Texas. Okay?
Wow.
Anyway, that's your answer why all these dreamy intellectuals here are not going to achieve any great success anytime soon. Notice I never said that their fusion ideas were wrong. I said they're dreamy intellectuals and they don't understand corruption. Okay?
What do you do as a result of understanding corruption? How do you deal with it?
First step is to know it. Okay? And we have a governor here who has just been...
Here in New York?
Here in New York, okay, has just been nabbed, not for raising electric rates, but for going to hookers. okay? And spending the people's tax money on worthless hookers, okay? And you know what? Once the people know that, maybe they can proceed to the second step. But if the garbage liberal scum press never mentions anything, they're not going to know it. Mm-hmm. So many people today say, oh, Gray Davis, let's just slough off of that. Wait a minute. When was the last time a governor of a major state was impeached and removed from office? Impeached.
I don't know.
Okay, well, you know what? Amy Badman sloughs over that. Oh, it was not really his fault. He wasn't, well, he was impeached, but he wasn't really impeached. And now about George Bush and the Republicans, okay? I mean, a governor of a major state kicked out of office. Unbelievable, okay? Because of the rolling blackouts that were, his hands were tied.
Was he kicked out?
He was impeached, okay? Impeachment is very serious.
Yeah.
Very serious. Yeah. And you don't even know that because you pretend to be from California.
They did pin them, but what about the Enron? What did they do about that?
Well,
who cares if they kicked him out? Where's the cash?
Okay, where's the cash?
My grandmother had blue chip stocks.
Okay, and where's the cash? More than 3 years later, Enron is indicted. Mm-hmm. Okay? And what happened in those 3 years? Nothing. No indictments. Finally, Ken Lay is forced to admit, well, I didn't do anything wrong. It was all Paula Gloria's fault. She did it, and her grandmother. I mean, we were just innocent, you know. We had nothing to do with tripling electric rates by 300% in California. Why, that wasn't us, okay? And, of course, it was pinned, and it was them, all right? I even have some of the recordings of his people saying, let's take the electric plant offline long enough to triple the rates. Have you got a problem there? Well, can you find the problem there? Oh, cable? You got to replace the cable? It's burnt out? Great. Don't be in any hurry to replace it.
What do you mean you've got a recording? You've got
I have audio recordings, actual recordings of worse than dirty words with hookers, are energy traders at Enron talking to people on the West Coast, primarily in California, saying, find some excuse to take that electric plant offline.
Do you have this that other people don't have this?
Maybe a few people have it, but I will tell you who will never run it on her show, and I will tell you what networks will never run these recordings. Uh-huh. They're called ABC, NBC, CBS, Anderson Cooper 69.
Are you going to have them in your upcoming film?
Absolutely.
So that's a great plot.
They are real recordings of real Enron energy traders encouraging any kind of electric problem so they can triple the rates.
Okay, now here comes an interesting proposal.
Yeah.
You know I do 9/11 Truth, and you have nothing to do with that.
No.
But I could imagine some people who would be very eager to give you money precisely because they don't want you ever to have anything to do with me again and my people.
Right.
And I think that's great. Grab the money, run, do your thing.
Okay.
On the other hand, I could also see putting a proposal out to people who are very enamored of what I'm doing and give you a lot of money and say, do just the opposite. Mm-hmm. We want you to highlight this. But in that case, I think you're kind of in the same boat. The theater houses that might be owned by those elements that want to hide this may not be any more fond of those recordings going out than some of the incidents during 9/11.
Well, you're a century.
What would you say about that?
You're a century too late. You know what entrepreneurs like me did 100 years ago as soon as they got a few bucks? They built their own theater. They have the remaining wall of what will soon be the most expensive office building in New York. It says Henry Miller's Theater. Henry Miller was a writer of erotic books, or as some people would say, dirty books, okay?
I met him.
And Henry Miller made a lot of money, but what he learned very quickly was, like you said, oh, no, not in our distinguished theater, Miller. Oh, no, you can't run that material. So he made his own theater, okay? So I will have to find some entrepreneur with a brain who says, I have 1, 2, 5, 6, 8, 10 theaters. I'd like you to run your film there. It won't be a major chain, as you say. Okay?
But do you want to go for major chain?
A major chain probably won't take me. And so what you say is so outrageous.
Well, you actually might make more money by putting the product on the table and having them clip.
Well, you just said,
Would you do that?
they probably wouldn't do it, okay?
No, could your show fly just with reality TV? Sex and the City did. A lot of the Girls Gone Wild. Christine Ebersole said, "Oh, you're describing Girls Gone Wild." I said, "No, I'm describing the man who probably inspired Girls Gone Wild."
Of course, and for real too. Okay, but again,
And for real.
the idea is you got to get hip theater owners, and I have heard from a couple already. So it looks like we have play dates for my movie, which is theoretically called Fahrenheit 9/11 and Ugly George. Okay.
Why?
All right.
Fahrenheit 9/11 and Ugly George?
Yes, Michael Moore is thrilled. Okay. We're going to have Michael Moore undressing Rhea Perlman and having sex with her, as directed by Howard Stern. Okay. Do you know who Rhea Perlman is? Mrs. Danny DeVito. Okay, and Danny DeVito is going to stand there and go, "Not with my wife, you don't." Okay, so that's going to be a part of the plot that I can tell you about. And there's some 9/11 stuff, and Michael Moore and I will bring in the 9/11 stuff, okay? And we will prove beyond the shadow of a doubt that Paula Gloria and her disreputable friends flew those planes into the World Trade Center, and it was all phony. We will prove it because Anderson Cooper said so, and you worship Anderson Cooper. You believe anything he says.
Who's Anderson Cooper?
You don't know.
No.
Oh, my God. Ted Turner will be so disillusioned that you don't know
I've
who
been
he
meditating most of my life.
is. Okay. He's another phony who reads off the teleprompter on CNN. Okay? You
So
know
what's
what
he going to read off as your show is hitting the streets, whether
Nothing.
it's in the mainstream
Okay.
theaters?
You know that despicable invention, don't you, called the teleprompter?
Yeah.
You know what that is?
Yes, I do.
It's, "Hi, I look good on camera, but I don't have a brain. So you know what? I will read secretly off the teleprompter of what's written on that screen, and I'll make it believable because I look good." Right? That's a teleprompter. Okay? So we will prove conclusively that Paula Gloria received tax money from Elliot Spitzer, who was right here on the bed giving her thousands of dollars of taxpayers' money, right here, to get whipped and bound because he's secretly a masochist. Okay? Right here by dominatrix Paula Gloria. Okay? It has been proven beyond the
Too
shadow
bad
of
we
a
don't
doubt.
have a cameraman.
Okay. Well,
But
you
we
get
can
the
do another
idea.
shot.
You
People
can
know
get
the
this.
bed.
Right here on this bed, students, Paula Gloria receiving your tax money from your Democratic liberal governor. And on the way over here, you may have heard, who did I run into but the wannabe governor, Mark Green. Largely forgotten Mark Green, and possibly with good reason.
Seriously? Did you get him on?
No, not he didn't want to be shot, and he seriously sneered at me. I, Mark Green, need to talk to you about anything? And in case you don't know who Mark is, him and his brother are the funders of, dare I say this in front of you, Air America. Okay? You've heard of Air America, that failed liberal network. Even Al Franken taking his clothes off couldn't raise ratings on Air America, and they bought it. So Mark Green and his brother, his disreputable brother, Stephen L. Green, they own Air America. You know that lefty station?
No, sorry.
You don't know Air
Yeah,
America?
I'm sorry.
It's a lefty chain of stations, and it opens in the morning with, "And now, here's a list today on Air America of what George Bush is responsible for and how he's to blame for everything." Okay? That's why it's a lefty station. Bush is responsible for all evil in the world, not only present, but past. Okay?
How about future?
And future, too. Okay? And if John McCain somehow wins the election in November 2008, John McCain will be responsible for all the evil in the world.
Do you know what I thought to do? I'm going to launch paulagloria.com with the show that MNN would play,
Yeah.
but YouTube wouldn't.
Okay.
You and me talking about the Obama thing where you had your laptop and you wrote
Well,
on
isn't it amazing that the liberal press has not even mentioned that? Credible
Still.
witness?
Yeah.
What the liberal...
But they said he failed a lie detector
Wait a
test.
minute.
That's what they said.
Wait a minute.
But
Sinclair is a real person, all right? And we're debating whether he's sincere or not, whether this actually happened, but he has some credibility. But he's real. You know who's not real? The New York Times, every other liberal establishment came out and said, John McCain had an affair with a woman. Gasp. Oh, it's awful. Not a homo affair like Obama. He had a straight affair with a woman, and that's despicable. We can't produce the woman, but there are two men who say this happened. Okay, Sulzberger, who are the two men? Well, never mind. Well, what are their names? Never mind. Well, can we interview them? No, they're secret. But these two men say, well, who are they? Oh, we can't tell you that.
That's a good point.
So whoever Sinclair is, he's a person. He's a real person. He can be found. He can be tracked down. He can be reprimanded. He can be counter cross-examined. All right? He can be.
Yeah, right.
But who are these two mysterious former staffers of John McCain, whose names are not given, whose personalities are not given, nothing about them is given, but you can't interview them because they're secret. Now, McCain had an affair with a woman, allegedly. The woman has not come out and said that he had an affair. I believe she's denied it, but I'm not sure. But you know what? Where is the rush from Anderson Cooper on down to say, the woman? Yeah, quick, let's go shove a mic in her face. Did this happen? No one has done that.
Wow.
They talk about her, but no one has done it. Now, she's either very mysterious and can't be found. She must live on top of a mountain in a cloud or something. Okay? Or she gave the wrong answer.
So what do you think about binary economics? Do you think that if we had capital distribution, like if you owned a piece of Time Warner that you helped to build up, that could actually accurately be determined by clicks, like you say, the most powerful determiner is the remote control? That can be tracked. It could be really accurately, tracked.
We can't do that because there are a whole bunch of people making a lot of money with the phoniest scam in the world, even phonier than sex, and it's called metrics, metrics. And what metrics refers to specifically is the alleged measurement of the internet, the alleged measurement of people clicking through on the internet, what sites they go to, how long they stay there.
Alleged, you mean it's not accurate?
Well, you know what? It's very interesting that Ugly George has almost 40 million links on Yahoo, 40 million, but never shows up on these metrics sites that say, well, this one had links and this one had page views and this one had unique visitors. They love these words. Okay? Never show up on them. So where do the 40 million links come from? Yahoo, you must be very stupid. 40 million links and no one is looking? Well, either the people are looking or the metrics things are full of something.
You know what, George, you're such a big energy, it's hard to put a meter on you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, what it is that the public has made anybody in public access big or not big. Okay?
Yeah.
You got a remote?
Right, I do, but not.
Can you put one in my hands? Okay. Paula Gloria wants you to know out there, this is the most dangerous weapon in the world. Right here, students, you see this weapon? This can make or unmake anybody, except for most of the people on Manhattan Cable on MNN, who ignore this completely and say, well, if the stupid public didn't go to my show, they're stupid, but let me tell you how great I am. This is the leveler.
Yeah, but we don't have access to the ratings anymore. Dean Lawrence said they don't allow that to be seen.
Well, okay.
But here, let me explain to you binary economics. What that means is that if you went to Time Warner right now and you said, cut Ugly George a piece of the action here, and because you're distributing the capital more widely to him and others like him, that your viewership and your product is going to be enhanced so that a few years from now, you're going to find that you haven't lost anything, you've gained, and we can insure it. We can find an underwriting insurance company that will give you exactly what you lost, supposedly, by giving the capital to Ugly George and others like him.
Okay.
It doesn't even have to be producers.
All right, you want to cut back to something more important? 5 times Ugly George was thrown off Manhattan Cable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And each time the question was raised, well, Manhattan Cable, UG is selling a lot of boxes for you. Why don't you do this binary economics and cut a check for Ugly George? Okay?
No, this isn't cutting a check. This is actual share ownership.
All right, or
Warner.
ownership, whatever you want to call it. And all 5 times Time Warner said, not only would we not share 1 share of stock with you, if you persist in this, Officer McGillicuddy, come and arrest this man and get him off the premises. Okay? So it's a nice theory, but it doesn't work in real life, okay?
Well, you're a very dramatic example because you're also seen as competition. But I'm
There
saying,
are only dramatic examples.
But I'm saying, look at it. When Time Warner first came into M&N and asked for this franchise from the good people of New York, they said they were going to give something back that they weren't getting now for just a couple dollars a month, 5, 10, so on.
Sure.
Today, it's $100 a month that people are paying.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I
a
also
huge amount
believe
of
in the
money.
Easter Bunny. When Time Warner said, oh, we're going to give you something, we're going to give back because we're a good corporate person.
Well, this is where I think we need to be aggressive as the media and just throw it in people's face that for reasons of national security we've been jeopardized. This is where you and I disagree. I think 9/11 is very important that people understand how dismally the media has treated them, and they haven't just protected their children from dangerous women's breasts, but quite the opposite.
What they haven't protected,
They've rained upon them dangerous weapons.
What they
right
haven't,
here in this city.
What they haven't protected the people from is to be a New York City councilman pays maybe $50,000 a year, maybe. Why would anybody spend $250,000 and up to get a job that pays $50,000? Now that has nothing to do with women's breasts. You know what that has to do with? Kickbacks, payments, money under the table. Okay? Who knows how much money? Do you, Paula Gloria, are you prepared to tell us how much money has gone under the table from Manhattan Cable to city councilmen of the city of New York in the past 30 years? Are you prepared to name a figure?
No, are you?
Time Warner won't tell me. Okay, so...
Time Warner knows?
Time Warner knows, yes. They have a secret set of books locked deep in the bowels of their building. Disbursements to political figures.
Wow.
And there's one calling for a bribe right now.
Rabbit Hole Central.
Hey guys,
Hey. If you want to turn down your computer, it'd be nice to share some time with you in your time of grief here.
Yeah. Just want to honor my mother. She passed on Thursday at 12 o'clock from a brief illness, and she was just going gangbusters and went to a shower for my cousin that's going to have triplets, and felt a little ill, but still wanted to go to the talent show at our church, and they called me back from Williamsburg saying that Mom was not feeling good. I'm taken to the hospital, and I spent close to 10 days in intensive care with her, and she lost her battle with it. And in the meantime, I gave her potassium through,
Steve Neskus.
I don't know him, but I don't want to talk to him.
and was able to be with her. That said, I feel like she's still with us in so many ways, and she's given me encouragement to continue on with binary economics and to see our community get to a better place. But thank you for your kind thoughts, Paula, on her passing.
Not a problem, Steve. Not a problem.
The
When are
thing
you
about
coming
the
to New
insurance,
York?
Paula, that's only going to be a backup. It's not going to pay the person that owns the technology. That's only if a failure happens to the company. But what hopefully will happen is that there's several ways that could happen. The government, through a discount rate, could give us money to invest in technology. They're very, very, let's say at birth. And that by that time, that money would be worth millions, and it would compound annually for the next generations, and that would be a source of total economic funding that no longer would we have to increase our salary rates. Like, you mentioned you were worth $40 an hour, but what if
No, that's what
money wasn't just the production, and that we didn't have to charge $40 an hour? Actually, we could charge a whole lot less, and the whole world could be on a balanced keel, where that it wouldn't be at the $2 a day in China versus $40 an hour here, but it would be on an even scale. So no longer would you have to ship jobs out. to do that same production here, which we need to keep our production quality going, obviously, in every country, because a country without their production is very vulnerable if it ever gets cut off. But there's
I think you should
achieve that, but the insurance would only be there in case the business failed. But the payback would be if somebody owned that technology, we took it over like a private equity group, they would be paid so many times forward earnings on their business, and over a 7 to 10 year period, that money would be reimbursed through the earnings of the company.
I wasn't following all that because Ugly George is, I think, leaving.
Okay.
But what I want to say is, did you watch Blasting Caps and Robert Ashford from a couple days ago?
I didn't catch that part of it, Paul.
Well, I understand you're in your grieving process, but when you're ready, I would suggest taking a look at that, because we spent all Sunday afternoon chipping away at this, and I learned a lot. I thought I understood binary, but I learned more. And he says that eventually an 8th grader can comprehend it, but you still have to be taught.
Right, absolutely.
So we're going to do it again next Sunday, possibly with Alan sitting in, because I might be getting a job for something at Cooper Union with, it's called Jews Against Anti-Zionism or Zionism and something like that. And it seemed pretty interesting, so I might be going to that if I'm paid.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Otherwise, I'll be here at 3 o'clock on Sunday, and you could email in, or we could shift some of the discussion towards you. But Blasting Caps has really been studying. He's really been concentrating. And I think, because I heard you were listening to the stream earlier, wasn't it wonderful that I got another ex-con to call in?
Yeah, it was.
I thought he was brilliant.
Is he from the East Coast, or is he a West Coast boy?
He's from Pittsburgh. I know that's where Blasting Caps is from. But he said he's not an intimate friend of Blasting Caps. I guess he knows him maybe through the music business. And I thought it might be nice if we get an event and we get some musicians here and find a venue. Everything's very expensive in New York to get the venue, but, who knows, once we get our thinking caps on, maybe we can make that happen.
Well, one of the core businesses in the coffee shop is the United Music Front, which is going to be dedicated to bring the independent musician that doesn't get the promotion from a few big companies that just want to make the mega millions to the forefront, and that will be a basis of money. The more that I'm developing is that each one of these places have to be a nonprofit, so all the money goes back into the community to help with services, so they can promote their ability to function. So if we have a bunch of people that want to make boats, that boat building or housing, manufacturing, or community building can be initiated, and all the money not being taxed.
What I liked about what Robert went through is it doesn't depend on morality or justice in any way, and nobody loses. It's like if the company did not grow in the future as a result of ensuring a market that had the ability to afford the new products, then you would be stealing or taking from those that presently own the capital. But if instead what you're doing is planning for the future and utilizing unused capital, then what you're doing is you're making the rich richer and you're bringing the poor along. So we all grow more prosperous.
Hold on for a second, please.
Yeah.
Hello?
So we all grow more prosperous.
Hello? That's from Cyprus. And I'll let
catch
one
it.
second, okay?
Okay. So that was Steve, and I guess we could wrap it up now. Do you have any comments finally, George? No. Okay. So, this is Paula Gloria. Thank you for joining me farther down the rabbit hole. I'll end the stream here. He got a call from Cyprus. His mom was from Cyprus.